Our top story now, a convicted violent sexual predator soon to be on the streets of Davenport. We want to warn you, some of the content you're about to hear is graphic. Ben Sanders, the man you see here, has multiple convictions of violently raping women. And now the decision. He will be released in our community. KWQC's Tiffany Liou is in court and joins us in the studio with the latest on this story tonight. Tiffany?
Gary, many people are on edge about Ben Sanders coming to Davenport. He has a long history of violence dating back 50 years, and we've mapped out some of it for you here. In 1965, he broke into a woman's home, tied her husband up, and raped her. He was released less than a decade later in 1973, but was back behind bars after he broke into a home and was shot by the woman living there. Then in 1980, while he was on a weekend furlough from prison, Sanders forced his way into a neighbor's house, quote, expecting sex. Again in 1986, he raped another woman soon after getting out of prison. Sanders was declared a sexually violent predator in 2012. Since then, he's been at a treatment program for sexual offenders. And today in court, the judge says he will be released and approved to live in Davenport. That's tough to hear from his first victim, the woman from 1965. She is still traumatized from the attack, and tonight she's speaking out.
Oh, I'm losing it.
It's still a fresh wound. Every detail is clear of a rape that happened in 1965.
We have a light at the stairs, and we seen this guy standing there.
The victim says Ben Sanders tied her husband up, and her 3 kids were in the house at the time.
He threw me on the couch, pointed the gun at my temple, and raped me. He held the gun to my head all the time he was raping me.
She remembers the gun was cold as he pressed it against her head.
49 years and I'm still on the psychiatric care.
Trying to wipe the painful memories.
When they arrested him, he still had the same clothes and shoes on of the night when he raped me.
This woman, one of Ben Sanders' victims, tried to commit suicide 7 times.
I wanted the people to know what I'm going through for these 50 years. And I didn't want him in Davenport. I don't know how I'm going to sleep now.
And Thursday in court, she and her family were there to protest Sanders' release. Her daughters, now grown, were all in tears.
They can say, well, doesn't it mean something that he hasn't reoffended since 1987? No, he's been in custody.
The oldest was 4 years old and remembers seeing Sanders in the home before the rape.
I remember what Mom was like before, and we used to watch movies and eat popcorn and color and play Candyland, and afterwards we never played anymore.
One man's violence changed the life of this family, who have tried to remain private over the past 50 years.
Does it mean anything to us that he's going to be under restrictions? Absolutely not.
But now they speak out and want to warn the public.
If you can reoffend when you're in custody on work release, you can reoffend with an ankle bracelet on.
Sanders has been undergoing sex offender treatment for the past several years, which is why they are allowing him to be released. The Department of Corrections and the judge say their top priority is keeping the community safe. Ben Sanders will have several restrictions as a registered sex offender, and this includes an ankle bracelet, parole supervision, a curfew, employment restrictions, no unsupervised interaction with minors, no alcohol or drugs, and of course continued treatment. The Department of Corrections is looking for an approved apartment in Davenport, and Sanders could be living in Davenport within the next few months. Gary?
All right, thank you. Alderman Ray Ambrose told us in our report last night that he is opposed to this release and says it is dangerous for the people of Davenport.
It's unfair to the honest, hardworking taxpayers, their families, and to our neighborhoods.
Alderman Ambrose says he did not know about the possibility of Sanders moving to Davenport until a local landlord contacted him. That landlord told Ambrose he was asked to house Ben Sanders. It's a story you can count on KWQC to continue to follow for you. And right now, a number of apartments are under consideration to house him. Once that decision has been made, we will, of course, let you know. New information tonight on a story we have been closely following for the past 2 days. A violent sexual predator and convicted rapist being released onto the streets of Davenport. Many of you obviously very concerned about this story with this man, Ben Sanders, being released from a commitment unit for sex offenders. We continue our coverage tonight. We wanted to know how law enforcement plans to keep us safe. KWQC's Tiffany Liou asking the hard questions and joins us in the studio, hopefully with some answers tonight.
Gary, I spoke with Lieutenant Bryce Schmidt from the Scott County Sheriff's Office. They will do all they can to protect the people of Davenport. Take a look at the map. This shows all the registered sex offenders within 10 miles of where I'm standing now. And one man whose dot will be added to this map soon is getting extra attention tonight. There are 347 registered sex offenders in Scott County.
It is a concern that we have, when the numbers never go down, the numbers always continue to increase.
Lieutenant Schmidt says that's the second highest in the state of Iowa.
Here we're having, these committal processes and civil committals, and now people are starting to come out, and it's not your typical situation.
Ben Sanders is one of the sex offenders that he is referring to. Sanders is being released from the Civil Commitment Unit of Sex Offenders in Cherokee, Iowa, after serving time for multiple violent rapes.
It heightens our awareness a little bit, and it's an uneasy feeling.
The rest of the community is also on edge, but Schmidt assures they are putting their highest level plan in place.
Level 3s are pretty rare. We don't do very many level 3 notifications.
The Sex Offender Task Force will be tracking Sanders' arrival.
You're always worried about anyone that's had a violent past history, that not only that they're going to commit another violent offense, but that it may result in a kidnapping.
They will also notify the media, all schools, and go door to door informing neighbors and businesses.
We want to go that extra mile as far as notifications and do as much as we can.
The Sheriff's Office will also conduct home compliance checks and work with the Department of Corrections to track him with an ankle bracelet.
Especially if he's on GPS. The GPS has been very effective in this area. When they come out, we just do as much as we possibly can do within our ability to keep people safe.
At the Civil Commitment Unit for Sex Offenders, Sanders went through a 5-phase treatment plan that includes therapy, psychological evaluations, and a transition program to help the sex offenders get back into the community. The facility says they only discharge patients after the court has determined they are ready. Gary?
Meanwhile, Davenport Alderman Ray Ambrose just released a strongly worded statement regarding the release of Ben Sanders. It says in part, quote, "It is unfair to law enforcement and it's unfair to the good people of Davenport and Scott County that the judicial system continues to release habitual offenders that rape, murder, and rob back into our community only to have them reoffend over and over and over again." We have the full statement of Alderman Ambrose on our website right now at KWQC.com, and we do have a call into the court system requesting an interview with the judge mentioned in that. Right now, a number of apartments are under consideration to house Sanders. Once that decision has been made, we will, of course, let you know. We went to the Department of Corrections looking for those answers. In a KWQC News exclusive, Tiffany Liou asks the hard questions and takes us on a behind-the-scenes look at how offenders are tracked.
We do care. And, we live in the community. We want to make sure that our neighbors are safe. We want to make sure that our wives and our husbands are safe.
It takes multiple agencies to make sure sex offenders are on track and away from reoffending, and multiple programs to help keep the community safe, starting with this GPS tracker that they have to wear around their ankle 24/7.
Put the device on.
We tested it firsthand.
Follow all the rules,
Okay.
and if you're good, we'll take it off tomorrow.
A buzzer warning and a light turn on as soon as a sex offender steps into an exclusion zone. Immediately, the Iowa Department of Correctional Services is notified.
When they go into a victim zone, we're going to respond and then get them from that zone.
Probation Parole Officer Richard Alexiashik says they will get caught right away.
They can track your speed, your direction of travel, so we can determine whether you're on foot, whether you're riding a bicycle, whether you're in a vehicle.
The GPS tracker pinpoints any location.
555, 27 mile per hour, you just entered an exclusion zone.
Exclusion zones are customized to the offender. It could mean schools, fairgrounds, or even a victim's home.
I call it that friendly tug on the ankle, that when they think they might want to do something they shouldn't do, that little GPS device on the ankle will tell them somebody's watching.
There are those who push the boundaries and break the rules.
Could go back to incarceration because of that.
The DOC team says it really does work. The ankle bracelet is one of their best devices, but it takes more than a GPS tracker to be successful.
The offender goes through a number of assessments to determine risks as well as need.
Programs teamed with tracking enforcement. They say they're confident the system works.
I don't know of another task force in Iowa or Illinois that's banded together and networked like this, like the Scott County Sex Offender Task Force.
Within seconds of taking off my test ankle bracelet, the DOC was notified of the tamper.
Yes, we just removed the test bracelet on test Tiffany, yes. So thank you for the call.
Every step taken in whichever direction, sex offenders are being monitored for two reasons. First, to make sure they're successfully re-entering the society, and second, to keep the public away from harm. Reporting in Davenport, Tiffany Liou, KWQC, TV6 News.
And with all that, there is no guarantee the sex offender will not reoffend. That is why the Department of Correctional Services has a number of additional programs, including the Sex Offender Treatment Program.